Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen. With me today is longtime listener, poet laureate, and Taya master Anne-Marie Young. This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today.
Hey, Anne-Marie, I have a question for you.
What's that?
When was the last time that you can think of that we had somebody on the podcast who is a professional annoyer?
Hard for myself. I don't remember. I'm looking forward to hearing about this.
I can't think of a time we've ever done that. And today we have somebody who not only is a professional annoyer, but you did it on Seinfeld. I mean, if you're going to do it somewhere, that's where you do it, right? I mean, you might as well make a name for yourself while you're doing it.
Oh, absolutely.
Her name is Annie.
It's very funny. My husband would appreciate that definition.
Annie, of course, was on Seinfeld for how many shows were you on? I'm not sure what the count was.
I actually did, I think 4.
4 of them?
Or maybe
Okay.
5, because I did 2 different characters. My recurring character was Doris Columbus down in the Florida condo.
Right.
And my husband, Jack, is always fighting with Jerry's parents.
Okay.
So
right.
I'm in some of the classic episodes, the pen, the Cadillac, the raincoats. And then I played, because my part was not very large, I played a second character in that great episode Airplane when Elaine is stuck in coach and
Right.
Jerry gets bumped up to first class. And I'm the, as you say, very annoying passenger who sits next to Elaine and gets, it does not make her trip any more pleasant.
Something I think all of us can relate to at some point in our lives when we have that person we're sitting next to is like, oh God, why did I get
That's me.
But then later on in life, you basically reinvented yourself, of all places, on TikTok. How did that come about?
It's very weird, isn't it? I'm 86 years old, and I have now close to 5 million followers on
Wow.
TikTok, which I still don't understand. And by the way, I keep forgetting to tell people, I now have started a YouTube channel,
Oh, really?
Annie Corzin Videos, where I post the same things that I post on TikTok. But I've discovered it's 2 different audiences.
Oh, yes.
The TikTok audience is much younger.
Much younger, yes.
So
and more international, too, I would say.
it is international. I don't know if YouTube, do you think YouTube, maybe you're right. Maybe YouTube is not as international. I never even thought about
a
that.
strong international presence, but it tends to be more.
TikTok is definitely international. You're quite right.
Yeah.
And it's funny that you say about being annoying, because the fact is, all of my life, I have been criticized for being too talkative and too opinionated and too blunt about my opinions. And I've always apologized for it. Now, in my 80s, I'm being celebrated for those exact same qualities.
Isn't that funny how
Because
that's
my young fans say, we love hearing you talk. We love hearing your take on things. They stop me on the street. So it's very strange. So actually, it's one of the themes of my book, which I will, of course, talk about, is that you should not be imprisoned by other people's negative opinions of you. And I was all my life. Now, if you said to me, Annie, you talk a lot, I would say you're absolutely right. And guess what? You might want to listen to what I have to say. You might learn something, or you might get some inspiration. But I certainly wouldn't apologize for it.
Well, especially since
Listen,
we landed on
people
Seinfeld.
say you do this, you do that. Do you get that in your lives?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, especially when you do a podcast.
Do people criticize you?
Well, it's not so much that they criticize you, but when you do a podcast, you tend to speak your mind. So there are going to be some people who are going to be put off by that, and they don't remain listeners; they go away.
Right.
But that's okay, because the ones who stay like you, and that's all fine, So it all balances out.
Right. And you can't please everybody, can you?
No.
We would like to, but especially women. Women are, maybe not so much now, but from my time, women were brought up to please, to be liked, to be, I heard a funny story the other day. I was at a doctor, and I was late because I'd gone to the wrong doctor because their names were similar. They were both Asian names, and I couldn't remember. One was Dong and one was Jong or something, and I couldn't remember who I was seeing. So I got to my doctor, and I said, I'm so sorry that I'm late. And she put up her hand, and she said, Annie, I have to tell you something. In this office, all day long, I have women saying that they're sorry. I never, ever, ever hear it from a man. A woman will say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to shower. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm late. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't fill out the form. I didn't bring the sample that you wanted." She said, "In this office, do not ever tell me that you're sorry." Isn't that interesting?
It is, yeah. It's
Only
not terribly surprising, but
only the women say that.
yeah.
So I'm sorry, where were we, Walt?
I'm sorry to have interrupted you. No, actually, I want to learn more about the book. The title of the book starts with The Book of Annie. What was the subtitle again?
I'll hold it up. It's and then I'll tell you why I have to read you the whole title.
Okay.
It's The Book of Annie, Humor, Heart, and Chutzpah from an Accidental Influencer. And here's what happened with this title. I made a really stupid mistake. And so did my editor, and so did my literary agent with that title, because it might have changed now, but when it first came out, if you go to Amazon or even Barnes & Noble and you look up The Book of Annie, guess what comes up?
I have no idea.
The Book of Annie, the Broadway musical.
Ah, okay.
And so unless you just give my name, if you give my name, it'll come up Annie Corson, or if you give the whole title. But that was, I don't know how we didn't catch it. And I even look like Annie. She had curly red hair. Right?
That's true.
So that was titles are so important. That was a really dumb mistake. So it's The Book of Annie, Humor, Heart, and Chutzpah from an Accidental Influencer, or just my name. It's the easiest, Annie Corson.
I like the chutzpah part, by the way.
Do you?
I do. I like that.
Not everybody knows that word. How do you know that? Where are you located, by the way?
I'm in Connecticut. I'm near Hartford.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, and where are you?
I've had a lot of Jewish people around me, so that's why I'm used to the idea of.
So you knew the name, because not everyone does.
Yeah.
And sometimes I go on these podcasts. Here's Annie Corson, author of The Book of Annie, Humor, Heart, and Chutzpah. But actually, it's a Yiddish word that has kind of a negative meaning. It means nerve. She's got a lot of chutzpah. That means she's got a lot of nerve. And I want to kind of redefine the meaning of that. It's not nerve, but I haven't come up with a word yet. What do you think is a positive way of saying nerve?
Personally, I find chutzpah to be positive. Now, maybe that's because of the people I've known, but the Jewish people I've known, whenever they've talked about that word chutzpah, they've always presented it to me in a positive light.
Really? That's interesting, because it's really not. I mean, the original actual meaning of it, it's somebody who's got a lot of nerve. So I would say maybe who is
confident, risk-taking. Yeah.
What was that?
I was thinking like confident or like risk-taking,
Yes.
Those kind of things.
I like both of those, confident and risk-taking. Those are good ones. I like that. A lot of my fans are on the young side. And when they stop me in the street and I say to them, well, by the way, I'm sorry, the book actually came as a result of my TikTok platform. Okay. Because I was able to get the book published because they knew that I already had,
the following,
all those fans. And the book is basically a collection of humorous essays and observations that are based on a lot of the things I talk about on TikTok. And those things are based on a lot of my last, I don't know how many years as a storyteller. I do storytelling. I've done it with the Moth, and I do it here in LA at spoken word evenings. So this is material that I have been polishing for many years. So it's basically humorous essays on how I see life, whether it's marriage or dating or motherhood or thrifting. Thrifting is a big thing with me, or food or travel, just how I see the world. Hopefully with stories that have happy endings. I think there's too much ugliness in the world. I don't want to add to it. So I don't talk about politics.
Yeah, I love that. Totally love that. Yeah, that's why we do your daily.
I want it to be a place where a happy place. There are still trolls, of course. I mean, there are trolls on TikTok. There's always somebody will say, maybe, but
How did you end up starting a TikTok though? I mean, that, because let's be honest, like you were saying earlier, that is a platform for a much younger generation.
Yeah, it was.
Why did you choose that?
It's funny, Walt, that you asked that, because actually it relates to one of the themes, one of the other themes of my book, which is that I try to make it my mantra. If someone suggests I do something, even if I think it's questionable, I try to say, yeah, why not? Mm-hmm. Within reason. If you ask me to go bungee jumping, I'm not about to do that. So just before the pandemic, a week before the pandemic, the lockdown started, I had a young friend and I was talking to her about my spoken word appearances and my solo shows. I said, in LA, you're lucky if there's 40 people in the audience. I wish I could find a larger audience for what I have to say. And I said, I was thinking maybe I should shoot some little clips and put them on Instagram. I don't use Instagram. I know nothing about it. I know nothing about any social media, but I thought maybe, and she being 30 said, oh, Instagram is so toxic. It's so last century. You belong on TikTok. And I said, that's ridiculous. Who wants to see this Jewish old lady from the Bronx talking about her life values? And she said, trust me, you will go viral. And I did. And so I said, all right, if you show me how to do it, if you produce it, yeah, why not? And I thought it was the stupidest idea I had ever heard. And she turned out to be right.
Wow. What a great friend.
And which, by the way, I want to say about growing older, it's very important to have younger friends. That's been a lifesaver for me. And I believe in intergenerational friendships. I think too many of us, look, people, my friends my age are all dying or dead for the most part. And it's not a happy place. I'm fortunate that most of my time is spent with people quite a bit younger than I am.
I think it's actually excellent. In fact, I totally endorse what you're saying, because I like to match up with younger people as well. I think that's part of how you stay young in your mind, how you stay.
I agree.
And how you learn things. Live a healthier life.
And you learn things. There's a lot in that youth culture that I'm still learning, including the language. I don't even know a lot of the language, a lot of the expressions that they use, even about me. I have to look them up. They say about me, what does that mean? Fortunately, it's usually positive.
Yeah, well, that's good. That's really good. Yeah. Emery, have you ever thought about doing a TikTok account?
No, well, I don't do social media, but I do watch YouTube. But yeah, I mean, you learn a lot of stuff, actually. I mean, people say it's just all rubbish, but you do get a lot of wisdom from it. And like my kids will watch YouTube. They don't have TikTok yet, but my kids will watch YouTube and they'll come out with all these facts. And I'm like, how do you know that?
That's it. Yes, it is a great way of information sharing as well as misinformation sharing. That's the problem,
true,
right?
Very true.
So how do you know? I mean, that's scary. I don't know what the solution to that is.
Well, you know what? I think we live in an era where people are learning a skill they never had before in many cases, and that's the skill of discernment.
Do you think they are learning it?
I think we are. Well, I think we're learning it the hard way. We often do. I mean, that's the way humans probably are most goaded to learn. That's when they're up against the wall. But I think people are doing it. They're doing it slowly. They're doing it the hard way. But I think people are learning discernment, and in the long run, it's going to serve us well.
Do you think that when you say discernment, do you think they're learning from their mistakes? Like they might vote for somebody and then see. I think
everybody at one point or another makes mistakes and has the opportunity to learn from them. Do they always learn? No, but I think people are learning from their mistakes. I think what's even more important from the point of view of discernment is that they're also learning to decide whether or not to take what somebody else says at face value or to question it and ask themselves, well, is that okay with me? Does that really make sense to me? Rather than, oh, wow, it must be true because somebody else told me.
Because so-and-so said it. I think you're right. Here's what I would like. When I run the world, for example, I would never allow there to be any news program that only represents one point of view. In other words, the political talk shows are, huh?
You basically would be a news because all news has just one point of view.
Yeah. I mean, so so for that reason, my husband and I, we watch both. My husband more than I don't watch the news. I get too upset. But my husband will watch MSNBC, and then he'll watch Fox just to try to get, but what happens now is you usually, when you look for information, you're sent to what the algorithm knows you already like. So we're basically only hearing what we already believe, right?
Well, there's also an interesting side effect of that, because the side effect is that what they define as like is what you pay attention to. So if you pay attention over and over to what you don't like, that counts as like.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. But I just think it would be cool if every talk show, every political talk show had two opposing points of view, two intelligent and respectful opposing points of view. So you could just hear from whatever, Bill Maher and Joe Rogan or at the same time. Wouldn't that be incredible?
Well, we both were heavily influenced by being in the generation that listened to Walter Cronkite.
Right. Well, that's that seems like an era sadly gone by, right?
Yeah, well, it was actually an individual. Even the other newscasters at the time weren't Walter Cronkite. There was only one.
What was I? Oh, I wanted to tell you another theme. You might call it a theme, but something from my book that I'd like to share with people. The Book of Annie, Huber Hart and Chutzpah from an Accidental Influencer, blah, 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 blah. I grew up in the Bronx in a working class, blue collar immigrant neighborhood. I never liked it. Even as a kid, I wanted to get out of there.
Oh, okay.
But everybody were pretty much, we were all children, for the most part, of Jewish Eastern European immigrants, right?
Okay.
And the mantra there was always, and this came out of fear, the mantra was always, stick with your own kind. That was what we were brought up with. Stick with your own kind. And I think one of the smart things that I did in my life was to totally disregard that. Because as you develop your life, if you start to explore the other kind, whatever that might mean, whatever that might be, you end up having a much richer life. And I think there are still people who, we used to have a little country house in upper New York State when we lived on the East Coast, a weekend house, There's a guy down the road, Ralph's General Store. Ralph had this store where he just sold some basics, right? And we were around 2 hours north of Manhattan. And one day I said to Ralph, tell me, Ralph, have you ever been to the city? Have you ever been to New York? And he said with great pride, nope, never been out of the county.
Wow.
Now, he was proud of that.
Yeah.
And I thought, how very sad. What a limited life this guy has led, right? 2 hours from the greatest city in the world. And he hasn't bothered to, I mean, that's just so far from my understanding. But there are a lot of people who live that way, who just aren't either. I don't know if they're not interested or if they're afraid of whatever is not exactly like them. What do you think about that?
Well, first thing I'm doing, I grew up in upstate New York, so I'm trying to think, okay, 2
really?
hours
Where?
north of New York.
Where?
I grew up in Schenectady.
Oh, okay. That's further up. Okay.
Further up, yeah. So I'm thinking 2 hours outside.
Okay, you grew up in one of those.
You're north of Westchester. Was it Dutchess County? I'm not sure where you were at that point, but I was trying to imagine where you were. Were you in Greenbush?
Oh, we were in the Hudson River Valley.
Yeah.
Red Hook, Rhinebeck, Hudson, New York. Very pretty.
In Hudson, okay.
Apple Orchard country. It's pretty, yeah.
Okay, yeah, it's beautiful in there.
So but you were in Schenectady. That's a city. That's an actual city.
It's
right?
a small city, yeah. I mean, it's officially a city. It's probably a large town, but
okay. Oh, okay. I thought it was bigger than that. I'm just trying to think in my mind if I can still spell it.
I was having that conversation today with somebody.
SCH, T-A-D-Y
You got it. That was it. Yeah, I put T-A-D-Y at the end and you got it.
I think I got it. But I think there are a lot of people in this country who not only never leave home, but who don't trust anything that's outside of their home, who fear it, right? Or who think of anything on the outside as the enemy. And that's a shame, isn't it? See, I'm married to a Dane, huh?
Uh-huh.
So when you live in Denmark, I mean, my nieces and nephews have been traveling the world since they were babies. You have a vacation, you go to Mallorca, you go to Paris, you go to, Morocco, you go to, I mean, it's like they're just a not very long plane ride away from other cultures, other languages, other history. And so those kids grow up with a much different view of the world than somebody here who has never seen anything but what's immediately around them.
I have an experience that kind of mirrors what you're talking about from a slightly different perspective, in that approximately 25 years ago, I got married. I was married for 23 years. And at the beginning of our relationship, I wanted to introduce my wife to where I had grown up so she could see the town. And I hadn't been back in years.
Okay.
So we drove to Schenectady. And when we got there, I was in absolute stunned amazement because the town hadn't changed at all.
Oh.
Identical. The flowers outside of the house that I grew up in were the same as they were.
That's
30 years
interesting.
before that. Everything was frozen in time. And it was kind of an illustration of what you were talking about. Something that, if you didn't leave, nothing would have changed in your life.
Wow. That is interesting. It's strange. In some ways it's creepy. In some ways it's reassuring. There's a double thing, because now I always lived we brought up our child on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. That's always been one of my favorite places in the world. You have the parks. You have several different incredible parks. Riverside Park, which is on the Hudson, and Central Park, which of course is quite sensational. And you have museums. It's just and you have all kinds of food on every block. There's 5 different kinds of ethnic restaurants. Now, when I go back, it's more corporate. Yeah. There are chain restaurants. We didn't have chain restaurants. We didn't have McDonald's or Chipotle or Panera or any of that. We had mom and pop restaurants.
Yeah.
Those are starting to leave. And that does make me sad. That I wish had stayed the same. You know what I mean?
One of the things that always intrigued me about New York, I knew that I really would not fit well in New York. The energy was too high energy.
It is definitely high energy.
It's very high energy. But one of the things I liked about it is that New York, most people won't necessarily know this unless they have either visited extensively or lived there. It's a very neighborhood-oriented city. And
totally.
You don't live in New York, you live in a particular neighborhood and you identify with that neighborhood and you associate in that neighborhood.
Totally.
Right?
And it's so true. I never heard it put that way. That is so true. Another thing that people don't understand, who don't live in, they think of New York as an unfriendly place.
It's not
at all. If you live in an apartment building in New York, that apartment building is a village.
Yes.
The kids know each other. Everyone knows each other. Everyone looks out for each other.
Mm-hmm.
The
idea of a neighborhood watch originated in New York.
Community.
Yeah.
Which I don't at all in Los Angeles. Not at all. This is like the loneliest place I've ever been. Also, remember, you don't live your life in a car in New York.
That's right.
So you have interchanges with people on the bus, with people. I have a girlfriend who was sitting on the subway, and across the aisle from her, she saw a man who was reading a book that she had just finished. So she just went over to him and started talking about the book, and a year later they were married. That's not gonna happen in LA when you're in your car on the 405.
That's right.
I mean, people just meet each other. I've made friends in New York just waiting on the tickets. Like the tickets in New York is where you get half price tickets for Broadway shows. And whenever I go into the city, I do. I've made friends just standing on the line talking about what shows to see and what's good and blah, blah. And I can't tell you how many times people have said, oh, well, after the show, do you want to get a drink? I mean, it's a very to me, it's one of the friendliest places I know.
I agree. I mean, I have a few people I've known who live in the city and in various places, and they all have very similar stories to tell about how they feel about their neighborhood. And even as I've gone around their neighborhood with them, just watching all their interactions, they see their neighbors. Hey, how you doing? What's going on?
Exactly. You walk out and you meet your friends, and
Yeah.
absolutely, especially if your kids grew up there, because then there are the parents of your kids' friends. You know what I mean? So no, it is a very friendly place. People don't quite understand how that can be.
So that's what makes it so interesting to me, that you wanted to get out of the Bronx, which it makes sense in terms of what you're talking about, because you wanted to see the world.
Was too right.
But by the same token, you've ended up in LA, which you have described as being not quite the same experience, because it really isn't the same experience. It's
no, not at all.
Place.
It's not at all. I'm not a car person. Also, LA is not really. I'm an urban creature. In New York, you can get food and you can go out for cocktails or food any time of day or night.
Oh, yeah.
In LA, this big, supposedly sophisticated city, the restaurants close at 9:30, which means you can't have the typical New York experience, which is to go to a show or a movie and eat afterwards. You can't do it here.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
And that, to me, that was part of our lifestyle always. You go see a show and then you get something to eat afterwards. Can't do that here.
So that's why I'm kind of surprised. I mean, I would have thought after all of your travels, you probably would have wanted to go back to a place like New York, because you knew what kind of experience that was, and yet you chose to stay in LA.
Well, I say for practical reasons, because we moved here for showbiz. You know, I wanted to work in television, and there's a lot more work out here. Also, right now, we couldn't afford to move back to New York. It's prohibitively expensive, and we're used to having space, and you know, so
that's very much different. Yeah.
If I moved back to New York, we'd probably have to move to Queens, which I'm not familiar with, but I think some of it is still affordable and still has that neighborhood feel that I like. You know.
It's an interesting thing, though, how we end up in places where we are. Like right now, I live in Connecticut. I previously lived in Connecticut. In between, I was in Virginia. And at this point now where I don't really want to be here continuously.
Okay.
But I find myself staying for reasons that often bewilder me.
Well, I'll tell you the reason I stay in a place. I figured out the most important thing to me to be happy. I talk about this in the book. Is to feel that I'm part of a community of friends and like-minded people. If I don't have that, I cannot exist. And I have created, it took many, many years, but I have created that in LA. So I have a wonderful support group of other storytellers, other writers, other ex-New Yorkers. So I didn't have that the first couple of years, and that was really, really hard. Especially since we don't have family here. If I had a lot of family around, that could make a difference, but we don't. So if you don't have family, if you don't have a really strong supportive circle of friends, I don't see the point of being in a place like that.
Yeah, I hear you on that entirely. I'm also curious about something that you made reference to earlier, and you just mentioned it again, storytelling, which I consider to be one of the most important skills that any human being can learn. It's a big part of your life, obviously, because you were an actor, that's a big part of it, but also because of your book and what you're doing with TikTok and so forth. Talk about how storytelling has made such a big impact on your life.
It really has. And by the way, it's funny you should say that. I also teach it. I teach privately on Zoom, and I had or I've taught it at the Writers Guild. I've taught it at all kinds of places. When I say storytelling, what I'm talking about is preferably a humorous personal essay. In other words, something happened to me that changed me forever.
Right.
That's the kind of storytelling that I teach. And I recently taught it at Emerson College. It was the first time I taught it to 20-year-olds, and that was an interesting experience. It was a whole different thing. But I think storytelling, I agree with you that it's important. It's important in job interviews.
Oh, yeah.
It's important in, I mean, how many horrible speeches have you sat through? At weddings, at funerals, at confirmations, at graduations. People have no idea how to communicate with an audience. None at all. It's painful. It's painful to me. And I got to say, and politicians, they don't have the skill of showing who they are and they don't allow themselves to show any vulnerability. The important thing in storytelling is to share a problem, to share a mistake, because that's what connects us all as humans. Yes. So a lot of my stories, a lot of my chapters in the book are things where I was totally wrong, totally wrong.
So basically showing a vulnerability.
Yeah. And then what I learned from being wrong. And I think more and more people are not, as you said before, they don't understand the value of failure. Nobody wants to fail. They don't let their kids fail. They don't let, the kids make a terrible mistake. Oh, sweetheart, that's okay. I mean, instead of having a child face the consequences of their error. Well, gee, you killed the cat. No TV for you this week. Oh, you killed the cat, sweetheart. That's okay. We'll get you another one. I mean, I don't feel people are appreciating failure enough or owning up to it, honestly.
I think probably.
I'd love to hear a politician, just for once, I'd love to hear a politician say, one thing I really regret having said once, or one thing I really regret in my, wouldn't that be refreshing?
I'm not going to hold my breath on that one, but that would be
No, I don't think you should. But if I were writing for politicians, I would ask them to show their human side instead of pretending to be godly and perfect.
Well, not just politicians, really anybody.
Yes, I agree.
I mean, part of the reason I think storytelling is so important is because we're not just telling stories most often, and you were alluding to this, most often we're telling our stories, the stories about us, about what we've encountered, what we've learned, what we've gotten out of it, stuff that we want to share with others because we found some value somewhere. That's why we
absolutely. And it has to, there's a difference between a story and an anecdote. And when I teach, a lot of people come to me and say, oh, I have this great story. You won't believe that happened to me. They tell me a very amusing anecdote. I say, it is fun. It's an anecdote. You would do very well at a dinner party with this. That's not what storytelling is. As storytelling, you have to have at the end that moment of recognition that you went on this journey. Something happened. You were forced to go on a journey that you were unprepared for to solve a problem. And by the end, you do solve a problem. And by doing so, you have changed in some way. You've gotten smarter or more tolerant or more compassionate or less apologetic like me about my, and in that way, your audience will feel I'll tell you something. The best comment I ever got from TikTok, because I look at the comments and I try to respond to them if I can. Same now on this the YouTube is Annie Corson videos. Actually, I have to ask people, I'm going to ask you two, Walt and Anne-Marie, please subscribe to my new YouTube channel because I've got to get up to 1,000 viewers.
Okay.
I'm not there yet. But one comment I got that really moved me, he said, I do not know why I respond so profoundly to a Jewish American woman in her 80s. I am a 16-year-old Afghan boy.
Oh my.
And that's just, I just wept at that.
Yeah.
I felt that, what a wonderful thing that whatever I'm saying, whatever observations I'm making about life, they are
connecting.
Why can't I say not reverberating? What's the word?
Resonating.
How do you say it in English? They are.
Is the word resonating? Is that what you're looking for?
Something that resonating. Thank you.
Okay.
They are resonating with this teenager in Afghanistan. That I thought that was terrific. That told me that I'm doing my job. So as I learn things, my audience learns things.
I have. Go ahead, Anne-Marie.
No, I was just going to say, if you look at like our past shows, like 99% of people have hit rock bottom. You know, something's happened. They're telling their experience.
Say that again.
I said 99% of our guests have hit rock bottom. Something's happened, and they tell us what's happened and how they've got through it, and something amazing comes out of that. And I think that
I believe you. I believe that. Yes. Yeah.
It's what makes it.
I mean, if you're open to it. Now, some people don't ever recover from anything. I have a brother-in-law who, I don't know how old he is. I think he might be 70, who still is reliving every hurt that he got from his father. I mean, in every conversation, he has never dealt with it. He has never gotten over it. He has never found a way to forgive or forget or accept, or it's like it happened yesterday. And you know something? It gets very boring after a while.
Yes.
To listen to the constant going over this undealt with pain. I mean, I'm sorry that he's in pain, but I also get annoyed with, and he has a good life other than this. It's not that he's had it, not at all that he's had a terrible life. He has a good life, but he is obsessed with how his father mistreated him.
And that's a choice. That's a choice to feel like that.
I
said that's a choice to feel like that.
It's terrible. But it happens because we can't, for whatever reason, work it out or see or see what made his father be that. What kind of abuse did his father get to become that way? That thing that they say, hurt people, that one?
Yeah.
And I find that's usually true. As a matter of fact, I did one TikTok talking about trolls. And this is the only TikTok I've ever done where I turned off the comments. I didn't allow comments on it. And I talked about trolls because I had gotten some mean comments on something that I did or something that I said. And I said, I'm thinking about what it means. What is it that you're telling the world about yourself? When you sit, I'm assuming alone, you sit alone on your phone or on your computer, sending hateful insults to a total stranger who has never harmed you. What does it take to do that? And I think I know the answer. What it is you are really, when you do it, you are announcing to the world that you have not gotten enough love in your life. Because people who feel loved,
there's no need to feel like
do not need to express hate to strangers.
And I would even take that a step further. I would say that the person who is habitually in that frame of mind, in that mindset where they're putting out those kinds of messages, is not only someone who doesn't get enough love from others, but it's someone who doesn't get enough love from themselves.
Oh, yes, I'm sure. But that those things are connected. True. It's like I was talking about before. If you believe what people tell you, if you raise a child saying, you're a dumb piece of garbage, you'll never amount to anything, chances are that child is not going to be a Rhodes Scholar, right? Or a brain surgeon. That child is going to be a dumb piece of garbage who never amounts to anything because you internalize those messages.
And that's the challenge, is trying to overcome that programming. That's
exactly.
Actually the best kind of guests that we get. We've had numerous guests who have come onto the show and talked about how they were abused in some way as children, and they decided to overcome it. They decided they're going to leave it behind and not let it affect their lives, and they were going to do whatever it took to change the programming in their own minds, so that
right.
Governing.
Right. It can happen. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen often enough, but it can happen. Oh, so when I stop the kids on the street, or when they stop me, actually, oh, can we get a selfie? Oh, can we? It's very cute, and I like, I'm a performer. I'm an attention whore. I like attention of any
Sure, of
kind.
course, yeah.
I like applause. I love meeting my fans, and so I say to them, "You tell me why. Why do you listen to me? Why are you interested? Why do you have any interest in what I have to say?" And the word they use more than anything else, they say, because you're authentic.
Yeah, that's a big word.
Now, I'm not sure what they mean by that. I've been trying to think. Do they mean that I'm honest? I know I'm honest. They know that I'm saying what I really think. But a lot of people do that. Is that so unusual? Isn't everybody authentic? Or do they feel that everybody is not, that the people are not being honest? What do you think about that word?
Personally,
authentic?
I mean, I'll be curious to see what Anne Marie says, but my take on it is that the reason the word authentic has taken off, because it really has taken off, it has become
it has.
word, is because they're much more used now, particularly with social media, to encountering a whole bunch of people out there who are putting out fake imaging, fake messaging. I mean, Instagram, you mentioned Instagram before. There's a whole thing about having a fake Instagram profile that presents you to be much more beautiful and attractive and strong and wealthy and so forth than you actually are. And in fact, it's actually a psychological problem, because there are people who have huge followings on Instagram because they presented this persona that's not them at all. And because of that, they feel miserable because they don't feel like they measure up to their own persona.
Gee whiz.
Yeah.
Gee, so that's something new. I never even heard about this before.
Oh, yeah. It's a huge thing. Well, one of my other co-hosts, Joel Elston, who does another show with me on Mondays, he is a life coach, and he has coached a number of people who have had large followerships on Instagram and who have gone through this very same syndrome where they can't measure up to their own persona. And they literally have to find some way to deal with that. So I think that's where the whole authenticity thing comes from, because people are that's the discernment again. People are discerning. Some people who just aren't presenting their real side.
That's strange. That's so not me. Unfortunately,
yeah, I get that. Yeah,
I accuse too much of the other, that I'm too much presenting my real side, that I should maybe take it down a little bit. But that's just not my personality. I guess I've had, even though I've always, as I said, been criticized all my life for being too frank about my opinions, about my feelings, and being married to a Dane didn't help, because the Scandinavians are like the Brits, and in that they feel any display of strong emotion is bad manners. It's uncomfortable for them. You don't ever, you have to keep everything's nice, everything's okay, everything, you don't complain, you don't criticize. And so again, I just stuck out.
So Anne Marie, do you think that's a valid stereotype that she's presenting there?
No, not my part of Britain. my part of Britain's very opinionated, and everybody tells you what they think.
Oh, really? Really? But would you say that's typically English behavior? I wouldn't.
I would say it depends which class. And I think it comes down to that authentic thing. You've probably got people who've got their image, their reputation,
right?
They will probably be, like you say, that less authentic kind of thing, and they would be more reserved and offended by brash emotions. Whereas my class, we don't care.
Right.
You just don't get any coverage, that's all.
That's funny. But I forgot where. But anyway, look, I love the attention. And something else, by the way, that I've gotten out of this whole strange TikTok experience, I have professionally been always told that I'm ugly. Now, that's not the word that they use. They would never say that. But I was considered a character actress, which really means not pretty. If a casting call went out today for an attractive older woman, I would not be seen. Because, and the real reason is I'm too ethnic looking. I'm too Jewish looking. They would never say
okay.
that, but that's really what it's about. And I've always been aware of that. And I've always thought, gee, I wish I were pretty. I wish I didn't have to have this Jewish face that is considered unattractive. Now, again, the miracle that my fans now, they write to me, oh, you're gorgeous. Oh, we love your hair. Oh, oh, we love your style. Oh, we love that necklace. Oh, what color lipstick is that? I want to get it. You're so beautiful. I am 86 years old. I have never heard these words in my life before.
What does that feel like now?
It's amazing. I love it. I love it. I'm eating it up. I mean, I have never gotten this kind of attention and this kind of accolade. They call me icon. They call me queen.
Wow.
I just, and I feel I deserve it.
That's good. That's a good thing. Now, I'm not quite as far along as you are on the timeline, but I've noticed something. I'm curious to know if you're experiencing the same thing. I'm noticing that I'm kind of reaching the point now where I'm in the wisdom zone, right? By this point, you've achieved wisdom, and I'm looking at the situation. I'm saying, yeah, you have no idea what you're talking about, because I don't feel particularly wiser than I was 20 years ago. But
you're still a kid. You're still a kid. How old are you?
I'm 67.
You're a child.
Yeah.
You got 20. I got 20 years on you. Over
you
20
do.
years.
Yeah.
But the thing is, you may not realize the wisdom that you have because you're not dealing with the problems that the young people are dealing with. You know what I mean? Yeah. If they were telling you their problem, like, for example, I'll give you an example. A lot of them want to talk about marriage, about finding a partner, finding a suitable partner, a life partner. And I think a lot of young people are doing this all wrong. They're looking for a clone, especially with online dating. If you put on, I like walks on the beach and foreign movies and Thai food, the implication there is that you want someone who likes those same things. My husband and I have nothing in common. We don't like the same food. He's a morning person. I'm a night person, blah, blah, blah. But when it comes to the big stuff, he always has my back. My husband is as interested in my career as he is in his own. How many women can say that?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the basis for a successful relationship, by the way.
I think so. So, in other words, I think people are looking for clones instead of accepting somebody who might have different interests. You can go to the opera while he watches the football game, right? That shouldn't be a deal breaker in exploring a relationship.
Yeah, totally agree.
And yeah, some people just go, I want them over 6 foot. They've got to be blonde. They've got to have brown eyes. And
I know that's so crazy. I mean, that is so crazy. A lot of men will only date. I've known them in my life. Men who would only date blondes. If a woman wasn't blonde, they
And then people wonder why it is so many women dye their hair blonde. I mean, they're like, the world is now 3/4 blonde. It was like 1/10 blonde 25 years ago.
I mean, the funny thing is, my husband, who comes from Denmark, where everyone is blonde and blue-eyed, and everyone in Denmark. I had one friend, a Bronx Puerto Rican. He went to Copenhagen. He looked around and said, even the ugly girls are gorgeous. But the fact is, my husband, when he met me, he thought I was very exotic. He liked my look. And I said, well, would you rather have some beautiful blue-eyed blonde? He said, oh, how boring. Why would I want that? Because that's what he grew up with. He doesn't consider that special. That's what everybody looks like there.
And that's what I was thinking when you were on about beautiful actresses, that when they get older, there's loads of those and they become invisible, surely, because you need that character. I think that character is quite a beautiful word.
I agree with you. I think it's too bad how ageist our society is and the lengths these poor women go through to keep that look. It's scary when you look at them, right? They're like,
you don't know what anybody is anymore because they all look the same.
I know. I find it very creepy. I do. The European actresses don't do that as much. They do to some degree, but not like America, because this is a youth worshiping society. Although I'm going to have to leave soon. Although I will say, I think it started with Betty White. And I think I have been lucky that there's a new respect for older women in this country. Golden Girls has come back.
Yeah.
Betty White was a big thing. And I think, and there've been a bunch of movies lately about older women. I was in one of them. I did a scene with Jane Fonda in that movie called Moving On. Mm-hmm. And I was in Thelma with June Squibb, who is 94 years old.
Wow.
She was starring in a movie. It's a very cute movie. If you haven't seen it, you should see it. Thelma. And so I think there's a new interest and a new respect for older women, and it's about effing time.
Yeah. and I'm on board with you with Betty White for sure. I always thought she was one of the most amazing actors of the generation. I mean,
yes, and a person. I mean, a
person who, too. Oh yeah.
You know, anyway, so I'm going to run people. Oh, by the way, so you can get my book on Amazon. I know these days there are a lot of people who don't want to shop on Amazon. And so I can also, the book can be ordered at Barnes & Noble.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I imagine it could probably be ordered in an independent bookstore these days, just because of how all that's connected together, I would imagine.
If you can find one, yeah.
If you can find one, right.
Right. But I mean, I don't know. I know that Barnes & Noble has them in their warehouse. I don't know about the independent bookstore. Some of them, I know some of them do, like that big one in Seattle. They, but anyway, is there anything that we left? I think we did a pretty thorough job here.
Well, I think we did. We normally have some things that we wrap up with, but I know you have to get going, so we'll just kind of do it more abruptly. And I'll ask for this just one thing. If somebody wants to reach out to you, how do they reach out to you? What's the best way?
Thank you. They could actually just go to my website, AnnieKorzen.com. It's with a K, ANNIEKORZEN on my website. I guess they can try me on Instagram. I'm really bad about using Instagram, but I think if someone sends me a message, I can see it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But if they go to my website, then they could just send me a direct email, which is always best.
That's a good thing. Yeah, I love that, and I'm sure you love hearing from people. So
and if somebody wants to work with me on their storytelling skills, yes, I'm open to that. I can do all of that.
Sounds beautiful. Anne-Marie, I always tie Anne-Marie, and I'll tie Anne-Marie in on this one too. Anne-Marie, what's your takeaway today?
So I think I had two takeaways. The first one was like, it's never too late to try something new and start living your life. And then the other nugget, which I absolutely loved from this, is just be you.
I love that. I agree.
Yep. All right, we're going to finish up because we do three things. We've already done two of them, so I may as well throw the third one in. So the third one is, Annie, I noticed because we live in this age of the internet and social media and so forth, because we're now in a place where we're trying to get the word out about what we're trying to share to people in any way that we can. So we do podcasts and we write on social media and so forth. A lot of people are picking stuff up from us that we don't never know about, and we never really see the results from that. And I like to kind of recognize that. So Annie, on behalf of those people you've never met, never seen, never will meet, never will see, who you've been helping in ways you don't even know about, on their behalf, thank you for what you're doing, because you're making an important difference in this world.
I appreciate hearing that. It was a pleasure talking to you.
And we loved having you. Best of luck. Keep doing what you're doing on TikTok. 5 million listeners. Oh my goodness, that's fabulous. Keep it up. Yeah, we love having you on the show.
Thank you
for sharing your story today. It was really, really great.
Thank you.
And Anne-Marie, as usual, this has been wonderful. But we'll have to carry on the conversation next week.
Let's do that.
Sounds good. All right. So thank you very much. Thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.